We do have a series of speakers that each build on the other. And if you've looked at the plenary session, I hope that you'll pick up on that pretty quickly. I guess just one real quick thing before we go on the way of announcements. We're not going to take a scheduled break this morning. I know it says that in your program, but we're going to continue on, and we'll just leave that up to you as you feel the need to come or go. But to make sure that continuity stays there, we're going to go through that. And before we get into each of the speakers, we'll introduce them separately, obviously. Each one has about 30 minutes. It's up to them exactly how they're doing their presentation. I know some have asked about questions. They can structure that as they see fit as they go forward. I think it's going to be a great morning. So let me jump in the times we live, and I do need to make this one quick announcement. Thank you for coming to SEAFWA. There are exits located throughout the room. There's some in the back, some on the sides, and we'll hope you take advantage of those. At any time during our conference, if the speakers should become boring or the interest level drops, earplugs will drop from the ceiling in front of you. We would urge you to put those in your ears before assisting others. If you begin to move at the brakes, your goodie bags may have shifted during transit, so be careful when you take those underneath your underhead bins. And if you're not a member of the SEAFWA Frequent Conference, we'd hope you join that and join us by gaining points for each of the SEAFWA conferences that you come to, with the idea that you may get a luxury vacation somewhere down the road. So, exits are pretty much anywhere you see a hole in the wall. And if you need those, I would exit there if there's a power level, because faster, stronger people will trample you if you don't leave. Our first presenter is a person I've had the pleasure to know for a couple of years now. If I were to ask you to do word association and say Nashville, you can probably bet the first words that are going to come back from a lot of people are the Grand Ole Opry or the Opryland Hotel, because those are words that are associated with Nashville. And that's what we're best known for. And just two of the icons that Colin Reed manages as the Chief Executive Officer of Gaylord Entertainment. When he first begins to speak, you may hear some of those little side comments like, he ain't from around here. Well, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that may be a technicality, but he is from around here in every sense of the word, and I'm very proud to see that. While he may lead an industry giant in the works that he does on his day-to-day basis, he's just as passionate about what he does for wildlife and wildlife conservation, and whether it's his intensively managed farm for wildlife that he has in Mississippi, or the innovative multi-organizational efforts that he does through the Opryland Hotel to gather together people in conservation themes. He lives what he promotes. A couple of years ago, Colin and I had the opportunity to play golf together. Actually, he was playing golf and I was spending quality time in other people's fairways. But we were talking about the upcoming election for the governor in Tennessee, and he said, you know, Ed, every one of these people that are running for governor have come by and said, we'd really like your support. And he said to me, I tell every one of them, you don't get my support unless you support the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. And ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any better than that. Mr. Colin Reed.
You know, when Bob got up to talk and was talking about the quality of the color guard, you know, I happened to look at those uniforms, and you know, whenever an Englishman sees those uniforms, they get puckered up. So if what I have to tell you this morning is a little off from what I normally talk about, it's because I'm still a little puckered up. Ed asked me to talk a little bit about connecting. Bob used the expression "connecting with wildlife," and how hunting, fishing, conservation has played a role in this young man's, old man's life. And that's what I want to do here this morning, because so many folks, you read the rhetoric, you hear the rhetoric rather, you read the comments about hunting and fishing, but you know, what you folks have in this country is quite extraordinary, and that's what I want to talk a little bit about. Ed's right. We did connect about 2-3 years ago, And all the folks that came running through my organization trying to get me to support them for governor. The good news is, very early on, I selected to support this young man from East Tennessee called Bill Haslam. And I got to know Bill very well. And I think we did his first fundraiser here in Nashville. And I know, even though he's not a big-time hunter, I will tell you this, that his son, I took him to my farm, is a big hunter, loves the outdoor life, and I know our governor here in Tennessee is very, very committed to the outdoor agencies and the preservation of conservation. So that's all good news. Now, for my sins of doing his fundraiser for him and talking to him a lot about this stuff, he asked me to chair the Tourism Commission of Tennessee, so I've now got a full-time job and this other job, which I find, frankly, is taking more of my time, but it's all good stuff. So Ed, thanks a lot for the thing that you and your organization do. And I don't think Sam Poulos, Dr. Poulos, is here from Mississippi. He was coming. And the Mississippi agencies, folks have really helped me understand conservation, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But as Mr. Carter said, I'm not from around here. I was originally born in England a long time ago, back in 1947. You're now shocked. You just can't believe how old I am. And life has been good to me. I've had a pretty lucky life. My dad was a young man back in 1939, and first daylight bombing raid into Bristol in England. Both his mother and father were killed, and he and my grandparents. And my dad joined up, went to work. Went into the RAF and was in Wellingtons. And out of 85 people that went to flight school, he was one of 5 that survived the war out of that whole thing. I was born in 1947, and you know, my mother told me that for the first 5 years, he would never talk about the war. He would never want to talk about the horrors he had seen. But it had really, really dramatically affected his life. He built a big business, and by the time I was about 9 years of age, we had a very, very nice lifestyle. Big house, went to a private school, and life was good. And then he lost everything because, sadly, he was an alcoholic. And it was a very traumatic time in my life. And when I became 15, when I got to 15, I left. I left school early because we were so poor. Never had the opportunity to hunt and fish, never. In Britain, the way it works, and if any of you know this, forgive me, but the way it works in Britain, if you're part of the landed gentry, if you're part of the, you know, lords and ladies, and you're part of the brigade who, the side of the railroad tracks that inherited the land that hunting is allowed on, and as you probably know, very few pieces of land in Britain you can really hunt on unless you go up to the northern part of Britain. I never had the opportunity to experience this. I did a little bit of fishing as a kid, grew up, and then went to work in an accounting office, and for 4 years started to become an accountant, became an accountant, was paid £4 a week. You can translate that into today's terms, that's about $6 a week. And then got into the hotel business and got promoted about 8-10 times in the space of about 15 years, married, had 2 boys. And then in late 1986, I was effectively running the Europe, Middle East, and Africa operation of Holiday Inns. And something really traumatic happened to me, which was the chairman of the company came through London and said to me, "Colin, I want you to move to the United States and come work for me for a couple of years. We're doing a big leverage recap of the company. Your background's finance. We want you to come over to America." And I'm thinking to myself, you cannot be serious. I love this game. You guys will think I'm crazy when I tell you this. I love this game, cricket. I play cricket. You're thinking, you know, how can this man say such stupidity? You know, but I love this game, and I had a social network. And so Mike, the chairman of the company said, hey, what are you doing on Monday? Come on over, come talk to me about this. Memphis, Tennessee. I flew over to Memphis, Tennessee, and those of you that know Holiday Inn's corporate headquarters was on Lamar Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee. And this is not a good place. I remember the first night staying in the Holiday Inn, got up the next morning early because I was jet lagged. I got up, you know, at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I said to this lady at reception, I want to go for a walk. Where do I go? She says to me, are you kidding me? People don't walk around this place. You know, so I'm thinking, welcome to America. This is wonderful. So I go meet with the chairman of Holiday Inns, and I called my wife and I said, you know, there's a high probability I'm going to be leaving the company, and because I'm going to tell him no. So I walk into Mike's office, and I sit down, and he says to me, Colin, he says, so what are you going to do? Are you going to come and work for me? And I still to this day don't know why I said yes. I swear to all of you, and I said, yeah, I will. And it was one of those sort of divine moments where I made a decision, and it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And I went outside and I thought, I got to tell my wife now she's moving to Memphis, Tennessee, you know. So I did, and we did, and it was a fabulous experience. About 3 months after I moved, in April of 1987, my two boys had gone to school there, and one of my boys had met a friend whose dad loved to hunt, and this guy said to me, crazy guy, he said to me, I want to take you turkey hunting. And I'd never been hunting for anything in my life. I'd never grown up reading about it. I'd never experienced it. And we flew down, we drove down to Mississippi, went to this little club he belonged to, and we stayed the night, and then the next morning got up, and you know, this neophyte Englishman with his thick hunting stuff on in April in the Delta with mosquitoes looking like DC-10s, and I'm sweating like no tomorrow. It's about one of those 68, 70 degree mornings that sort of rapidly got to 80 degrees. And we walk into the woods, and I've read about hunting, you've got to be quiet and stealth-like, and he walks into the woods and he starts hooting, and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? So he's, and then after about 5-10 minutes of this, he starts cursing. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, the guy that looks after this told me there were turkeys here, and there isn't. Come on, let's go. And we'd already walked half a mile. We walked half a mile back, sweat's pouring off me. I'm thinking to myself, this is awful. So we get in the car, we go to another place, we sit down, same thing again, and he's led me through what I have to do if a turkey comes. And I'm actually glad Sam Paulus is not here, the head of Mississippi, because I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story right now. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I see my first deer in the wild just walk past. It was the most beautiful, beautiful thing, beautiful. And I look at that and I'm going, wow. And then all of a sudden this friend of mine says, do not move. Turn your gun to the left. I lifted my gun and I looked around to the left, and I see a turkey standing there, and then another turkey and another. There were 5 of them, 5 gobblers in a line. One at the end was a big one. This guy couldn't see the 3 at the end, and he grabs my barrel and he goes, no, there, like this. Boom, I kill this turkey. And I jump up excited, and he says, sit down, let's see if we can get another one in. Well, about 20 minutes later, he's doing all this clucking and, you know, and for the first time I hear an American wild turkey respond, big gobbler. And about 100 yards, we're in the wood, about 100 yards he comes in, and for the first time in my life I see a fully strutted wild turkey, and it was one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen. And this turkey comes. And this guy's sitting here, and he says, I can't shoot him, you better shoot him. So I said, you sure? He said, yeah. Boom, kill that turkey. And so we jump up, and I'm carrying the 2 turkeys out of the woods, recognizing when I get back that the law is 1 turkey, 1 day. So we go back to this place, this clubhouse, And all these folks are sort of saying, well, how'd you do it? I got 2 turkeys. And they go, son of a, you know, like this. You know, and that was the moment that I became addicted. It was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen in my life. And it has transformed my life. And I joined that hunting club about 6 months later. It cost me to buy a room and join the hunting club. It was about a $120,000 deal. My wife thought I was crazy about it. But what happened was my boys, I took my kids, my 2 boys, they had to listen to Willie Nelson music all the way down to Mississippi. I lived in Memphis. It wasn't too bad. And Willie Nelson all the way back, and those kids used to complain like hell. But I remember my first time my eldest son, you know, killed his first deer. That's a memory that I'll have, you know, for the rest of my life. And my young son, I remember the first time I took him hunting, and here comes this doe coming across, and I said, Eddie, he was like 10 years of age. I said, Eddie, he'd done his hunter safety, done it with the Tennessee agency, did a fabulous job. I said, Eddie, shoot this deer. He said, Dad, I want to go to the restroom. I said, Eddie, shoot this deer. He said, Daddy, I want to go to the restroom. I said, Eddie, quick, shoot the deer. He said, Daddy, I've just gone to the Eddie peed himself. He was... That, by the way, that son of mine, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, will provide me with my first grandson, my first grandchild, which is just quite an extraordinary thing. But the point of all of this that I wanted to talk about is that you folks really take for granted the extraordinary natural resources and the way, the culture, the lifestyle that you are all in. You sort of see it like this. And I will tell you that it is quite extraordinary what goes on in this country. There is nothing like it. You may find little pockets in Europe. You may find little pockets in Asia. But the right to bear arms, the right to hunt, is such a precious thing. But the other part of it is the conservation. Because I think everyone in this room probably loves to hunt and play golf like Ed, although Ed is pretty useless at golf. You can tell he spends more of his time on his work than he does on his golf. When he said he was in other fields, I mean other fairways, trust me, he was right. But what you do is so remarkably precious. So what happened was with me, I did pretty well here in this country. Moving over. It took me about 5 years to decide I want to live the rest of my life here. My wife the same, and my kids the same. And we became citizens back in the middle 90s. And this is my home. And this is where I will spend the rest of my life. And I will tell you that hunting and fishing and the outdoor has played such an extraordinary role in my family making this decision. So what happened was, so I got, again, promoted a couple of times, and and one of the small companies that Holiday Corporation owned was this little rinky-dink casino company called Harrah's. And what the chairman of the company asked me to do was to go into the Harrah's division in the beginning of the 90s and effectively be responsible for development and be the chief financial officer of that company. And we took it public, and we grew that company to the biggest casino company in the world. And we bought 4 other casino companies, most of which were based in Las Vegas. So we moved the corporate headquarters from Memphis, Tennessee, to Las Vegas. And so at the time, this happened in 1998. I was co-president of the company, chief financial officer, Fortune 500 casino company. We moved the corporate headquarters to Las Vegas. There's not a lot of duck hunting in Las Vegas. There's not a lot of turkey hunting in Las Vegas. There's a little bit of hunting, but it's up on the high plateau, more in the north of the state of Nevada. And frankly, it was troubling to me. So Back in 2001, this company, Gaylord, comes knocking on my door and says, hey, we'd like to, we're going to completely change the management of this company. We'd like you to come and be CEO of it. And it took me about 3 months to negotiate the deal. And my friends in gaming were absolutely apoplectic, because I took a big pay cut to move to Nashville, Tennessee, to run Gaylord Entertainment. They couldn't figure it out. I'm saying to them, you can't put a price on lifestyle, in my mind. You can't put a price on the fabulous things that you find living, I think, in the southern part of the United States of America. So I moved back to Nashville, Tennessee, and this is probably a community that I will spend the rest of my life in. I love Nashville. I've lived in Memphis, lived in Las Vegas, traveled the world. I've taken this accent to Africa, I've taken it to the Far East, Middle East, and this is a great place to live. And so what I did was, I still kept this membership of at this club in Greenwood, Mississippi, called Backwater Break. And what pained me about this place was, you know, I would see every single antlered deer shot, whether it was 1.5 years of age, or very rarely did we ever see a deer on that place that was in the 4.5, 5.5-year-old. Very rarely did you see that. And I was also peeved with a little bit of the way the folks were dealing with habitat. I started to read about habitat and how important it was, and how production of food for wildlife is important, and areas for, you know, sanctuaries, because it's so important. And I was miffed about this, and so back in 2003, I decided to buy my own farm. And I told my wife we were going to rather invest money in the stock market. It's been a good investment, by the way. Rather invest money in the stock market, I was going to invest money in real estate. And I had somebody accumulate 5 big parcels of land down in Greenwood, Mississippi, and I now own 2,000 acres down there, just north of Greenwood. And with the help of the Mississippi Wildlife, and with the help of Ducks Unlimited, QDMA, Wild Turkey Federation, I have spent a lot of money on this farm, but it was really all farmland and a big block of timber in the middle. But there was really very few places, sanctuaries for, you know, for deer to actually produce, and turkeys to nest, and there was a few quail on the farm. But right in the middle of the farm, there's a whole bunch of sloughs. Timbered sloughs, and the duck hunting there when it's cold in Arkansas is pretty good. And there was a 200-acre abandoned catfish pond sitting in the middle of the farm, which we've completely overhauled. And that is now some of the finest duck habitat that you can have. I was there at the weekend with Brian, and looking at the pond after pond that has been now with corn this high and rice that will be flooded for the ducks to just literally stay there. We like to keep them on the farm. We'll have anywhere from 10 to 20,000 ducks on that farm, just literally spending their time through, and we will hunt the outskirts of that thing. The deer, when I first moved onto this farm, the deer we had, a big deer was in the 130 class. Last year, we shot probably 5 over 150. In fact, my dear friend, one of my closest friends, is Johnny Morris at Bass Pro Shops. Every year, Johnny comes to my farm and brings Jerry Martin. And Jerry, for the last 2 years, has killed a 150 class deer. Last year, he killed a 150 class 8-point on that farm, which was quite a big deer. We're seeing a lot of big deer. And I can tell you the reason for this is because we will try hard not to kill a deer under 4.5 years of age, an antlered deer under 4.5 years of age. And it's just going tremendous. When I first moved to this farm, we didn't have turkeys. There were no turkeys on this farm whatsoever. And the reason for it is there was no really nesting habitat. It was about a 300-acre block of woods. and then everything was leveled farming. And what I have done is put about 400 acres back into CRP and WRP, and a couple of turkeys just turned up one day. And then Sam Paulus, he called me one day, and Clark Gordon said, hey, the governor, Haley Barber, wants to do one of the governor's hunts. We'd love to do it at your farm. Can we do that? So Haley came down, and I'd known him from my days in Memphis, and then the Mississippi Fish and Game released 10 turkeys, and we're starting to see turkeys now on this particular farm. I'll give you one other story. Every year, I always bring down members of the Grand Ole Opry to my farm too, and I've done this for the last 5 years. Every year there's been a hunt. For 50 years, the Grand Ole Opry, whoever the president of the Grand Ole Opry is, they've taken members of the Grand Ole Opry off for a hunt. And I've been keeping that tradition up since I've been the CEO. First 4 or 5 years, I took them to Arkansas and, to these lodges. But it's a little bit it's not good, because what tends to happen is you get half a dozen of these country singers in a lodge for a week, and then everybody just floods in. All of the relations of the guides and the relations of the owners, they just flood in. And these guys, when they come, they want to just have fun. And so like Blake Shelton, Blake is a guy who, when he's on my farm, the old saying, what goes on in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, or what goes on at my farm stays in my farm, because these guys go crazy for about 2 to 3 days. This last year, Craig Morgan, I let him for the first time bring his cameras down to do the Craig Morgan Outdoor Show, and it was like 10 times the hits on that show, the amount of people calling in on that show, than he's ever had. And there was a fabulous, surreal moment where Troy Gentry of Montgomery Gentry and Craig Morgan see this big deer from my lodge out in this field in this CRP with a doe, and they cover themselves in paint. One's got a bow, one's got a gun, and we got the whole thing on camera as these guys tried to stalk the deer. It was a complete cluster, but it was so much fun. The point of this is because what I have been able to experience, we have this beautiful farm, and these guys come and enjoy this life. And I'll tell you one other little interesting story, and then I'll shut up. I wanted to put a little crappie pond in there because little Jimmy Dickens, who's now 90 years of age, little Jimmy, he and Porter, I used to take them 10 years ago when they were fairly active. And little Jim, he comes to this hunt every year. It's like a religion, and he'll be there in January of this year. But little Jim says, no longer am I duck hunting because I get too cold, because his circulation ain't as good as it used to be. He's 90. So I said, okay, we're going to build a crappie pond. So I get the Mississippi Fish and Game to help me think about building a crappie pond there. And I build this crappie pond. And last year, we have it on camera. Little Jimmy's standing there, crappie fishing, pulling one crappie fish in after the other. Blake Shelton is standing next to him. Craig Morgan is standing next to him. And they're just talking about life. And I'm thinking to myself, none of this would ever happen had it not been the indoctrination that I have been able to get on conservation and hunting. This is such a magical thing that we do. I got another call about a couple of months ago from, I've got to be careful here, a retired federal judge who wants to bring a sitting Supreme Court justice to my farm in January this year. And that will be a very interesting experience, I'm sure. But again, it's one of these things that would I would have never begin to imagine me being able to experience. So I know this is sort of a rambling about my life, but again, I want you to know everything you guys do is very, very important. Retaining what this country has been about over the last 200 to 300 years is so critical. There are a bunch of, forgive me, Bob said Californians and and New Jerseys, but there's a bunch of, you know, liberals snipping at our heels, trying to change the culture of what made this country great. And I, for one, are going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. We as, let me just move quickly to our company, Gaylord. Over the course of the last 8 years since I've been CEO, Chairman and CEO of this company, what we've tried to do is build relationships with the outdoor fraternity. I was on John's board. That's how we had an investment in Bass Pro Shops, and I became committed to the conservation environment because John kept talking about to me, this is so critical, so important. So we've built relationships, our company has, with Ducks Unlimited. We host their conventions. We build relationships with Wild Turkey. We built relationships with the Turkey Federation. We host their annual convention every year. We do the same with now QDMA. We've recently built a relationship with the Rocky Mountain Elk Federation. And this year, our company, for the first time, built its own expo around conservation and wildlife. And we took the financial risk for it, and we actually lost a bit of money on it, but I think it's a really, really good endeavor for our company to do. And we are committed to, as an organization, not just me personally, we're committed to everything you guys do in this room. So if you wake up one day and you feel, you know, the earthquakes and Katrina and federal budget deficits and slashing of budgets, and you sit there and you worry about whether your industry, what you do, is going to be this way 12 months from now, 24 months from now, 36 months from now, know that some crazy, forgive me ladies, crazy-ass Brit in Nashville, Tennessee is going to do everything in his power to preserve everything that you guys do. So I don't want to take too much of your time this morning. Unfortunately, I got an all-management meeting starting at 10 o'clock in which we're going to try and fight the Katrinas and the earthquakes. You know, when Bob talked about that, let me give you this, the series of events through our company's eyes. So last year, we had the flood of record in Nashville. We had to, on the Sunday night, May the 2nd, as this whole basin here is flooding, we had to evacuate 1,500 people from our hotel. And we had a lot of moaning and groaning that night from a lot of our customers because this thing came quick. All the information we were getting from the National Weather Service and the Army Corps of Engineers was basically flawed. And we had to, as we saw this water just about to breach the levee, we moved people out. That cost our company $250 million. That flood with the Opry House, our hotel here, $250 million. At our hotel in Texas, we had about a mile away, we had a tornado come through there. We had that hurricane earlier this year, and then of course our hotel in Washington was rocking around in that earthquake. So we see this changing climate. Unfortunately for our business, it costs us a lot of money every time it happens. But again, guys and gals, have yourself a good convention here in Nashville. If you feel like you want to experience the Opry later in the week, come do that. If you want to go downtown and go see a real honky-tonk, we own the Wild Horse Saloon downtown Nashville. I know this is mercenary of me now trying to sell my organization, but have fun. And Ed, I think I'm done. Thank you.
From an industry leader, I think it's pretty clear how industry can cooperate to help promote all that we do. And to that place he has in Mississippi, that would be really neat, you know, if you ever got an invitation to go to a place like that. I mean, I'm just saying. But we do appreciate it very much, and thanks for all that you do.